he had of Aryan people. So it was an appropriation he created. So they weren't far off when they were accusing me of these kind of things. I just didn't understand the connection. The Aryan invasion has been debunked. Or has it? This is what we run into. There is clearly some DNA coming in from somewhere that does not make Indian people necessarily entirely indigenous. Now, there are indigenous tribes in India. In fact, India has some of the largest demographics of indigenous people in the world. They tend to be darker skinned. So this would also set up the idea of caste very early on, based on skin color. So the Aryan invasion in terms of somebody coming in and taking over has been debunked. However, there is still evidence of an invading tribe that came in and mixed. So we don't really know, but just be careful if you ever run into that idea that somebody came in and took things over, because what ended up happening was the British colonialists capitalized on that and said, oh, this is actually our birthright. This is actually us coming in and figuring all this out. And that's absolutely not true. I have to say that. So the Indus Valley civilization has some roots that come from Western parts. Devi would be an example, female principle, but then also this idea of the sitting meditation. The very earliest person, god that we know of Rudra, ends up becoming Shiva. And Shiva's evolution begins very early on, and they know that from a little, what are they called, steles that they find, a little stamp of some sort, a seal, and it's a meditative posture of a horned god. Now, interestingly enough, this horned god is also found in Denmark, not too many centuries before and after. So it's possible that on those trade routes it kind of spread this way. So the sitting meditative posture, the concept of Om, the concept of female principle are very early on from the origin, if we can say origin, because again, we can't talk in a linear fashion when it comes to the Sanatan Dharma. So once you have Om, you have the beginning of something. And at the very beginning, what we have are the Vedas. The Vedas are the original scriptures of what we would call Hinduism. The oldest religious scripture in the world is the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is the origin of everything. And in the Rig Veda, you find sort of incantations. So chanting began very early. Om is in the Rig Veda. And here is where we are introduced into what we would classically term an indigenous religion. It talks about the rivers, the trees, the grass, the sky, the clouds. Everything has a life inside of it. The Ganges is a she. The Ganges is a spirit. The Ganges is a god, or a goddess, I should say. The Ganges has something in it, but it is not separate from you. It is just a different form of who you are. So very early on, there is this concept, this idea that something in us is also out there. You have 4 major Vedas, the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and Athara Veda. All of these are considered heard, Shruti. They're heard. They are revelatory. They come from the ether and into you. They are not remembered, meaning written down. It took forever for them to agree to write the Vedas down. And to this day, you have student-guru relationships in which the Vedas are remembered. And they have very similar to Rabbinic Judaism for the Torah. It's very fascinating to watch. It's the head bobbing of learning the vowel sounds and learning how to memorize these scriptures. So to this day, you have Brahmin priests who teach students how to memorize the Vedas. The most important is the Rig Veda. The others tend to be ritualistic. There's a concept in Western, when you learn about Sanatan Dharma in Western world, that the Vedas are strictly ritual. This was another mistake I made, again, learned from a Hindu priest. But the Vedas really do set up the beginning of how everything gets disseminated as it evolves. So I don't think any Hindu would necessarily say that Hinduism doesn't evolve. It does evolve. It does change and shift, but not because, as we might perceive it, as it moves eastward, gobbling up other native religions as it goes. You can't gobble up something if you're eternal. You simply accept what is already there. There is no veil. It's all open to everything. So in our Western minds and our linear way of thinking, as Hinduism moves east, we would say it takes from this forest tribe, this elephant god, because elephants are part of the forest. They remove trees, therefore remover of obstacles. Oh, and we're going to come to this village and we find this goddess who's all about fortune and prosperity. We're going to take her in and take her in. There's nothing to take in if it's already the whole. Do you see the difference between how Westerners think and how they're thinking? So please just keep in mind it's always going eternal. After the Vedas, we have the Upanishads, which is what I talked about before. And really here is where you solidify. This is that. And this is where Unity Church also capitalizes on. I mean, there's no question Unity Church was influenced by this concept. This is the Atman, the you that you think you are, but you really aren't. The self, okay? And then this is the Brahman, okay? These two concepts really are introduced in the Vedas but get solidified in the Upanishads. There's several scriptures between them, but they're not that significant, at least in studying the religion. So this is that. Now the self, there is no self because it's this. It's just a perception. It's just a dream. It's an illusion that you would be separate. So when you get in ego, when you start to feel like things are happening to you, nothing can be actually happening to you because you don't exist. You're part of the whole. Does that make sense? I'm sure to Unity people it makes a lot more sense than many other people. In the Vedas, what's also introduced, ceremony, the relationship of the Brahmin priest. So the Brahmin comes by to the household. Things in the house have to be a certain way. The concepts of clean and unclean, the concepts of sacred and profane, these anthropological terms we throw around. Order and purity. In the Rig Veda itself, this concept of caste is set up. Now, I will correct myself, it is not the caste system, it is the Varna system. And the Varna system is a system of employment to them. On the outside, we see it as a symbol of racism, a symbol of discrimination, a symbol of color privilege, obviously. And I think it's somewhere in the middle. There are people that say the caste system does not exist. Please don't misinterpret it. Don't call us racists. And then there are other people who, I mean, even a week after all these messages were coming in, I saw a whole program on CNN, which CNN is probably the devil to most people in India. But it, again, listed the same diagram I had shown. In the Rig Veda, basically, the Purusha, the primordial man, is set up so that the higher people are at the head and the lower people are at the feet. And this is the graph then that gets formed from the caste system. Now, the caste system, I have to say it exists, but it exists not in paper anymore, obviously, but through how people are hired, not hired. If you're taking care of dead bodies by the Ganges and performing the ceremony of cremation, you're not going to be touched by many people because of the idea of purity. The idea was that to keep the majority of the people pure, the people on the lower rung had to absorb the uncleanliness. It's about an absorption of what is profane, basically. So I'm going to leave that at that in terms of the caste system. You can look it up. It's called the Varna system. It has its roots in the Rig Veda. It is abused constantly and then even more exploited by the British because the British come in and the higher ups they decide to hire for government positions and the lowers they use for their, what we would use in lower income levels. And then they solidified it so nobody could have any mobility. Whereas before, there actually was a lot of mobility. That's what people don't understand. In the Vedas and in the Upanishads, we had this idea of primordial man. Now, everybody got mad at me because I compared Purusha to Adam. I'm not saying Purusha and Adam are equal. In Western theological study, we use comparative techniques to illuminate some principles. Purusha is the original man, but Purusha goes further than what Adam would have gone to. Adam gets into a linear monotheistic understanding of family and progenitor and everything else. Purusha actually breaks himself up in pieces to become everything. Purusha ends up becoming universal principle, the Brahman, ultimate reality, total consciousness. So Purusha goes from being a being into the all of being. Okay? His counterpart is Prakriti. Prakriti is nature. Nature, while real, can also be an illusion. Do you see how hard it is to study the Sanatan Dharma? You get this? And this is why being born into it would be the only way to understand it. So from the outside, you're already missing out because you can't get outside, right? That would be what they say. How can you come outside to study something? Prakriti is referred to not only as nature and reality, but also illusion, the Maya. Okay? Prakriti simply is the trees, your senses, which can fool you. This is a big Hindu principle. Your senses can fool you. They are not necessarily the truth. So as nature takes its course, keep in mind to just take it with a grain of salt. It is Purusha you are aiming for, the ultimate reality beyond the beyond, beyond nature. From the earliest Vedic traditions, you have feminine forces. You have the concept of goddess. Goddesses, which evolve then into Shakti. Shakti is female principle. Shakti is not a goddess. Shakti is the energy force in the earth that makes things grow. Shakti is principle. She is a guiding. She is growth. She is nurturing. She is not a separate being. She's in everything. So we all have Shakti in us. The earth is considered Shakti as a form. Okay? Mother Nature and all Hindu gods, as we'll get into later when I get into the gods, all Hindu gods have a feminine counterpart. You can't have one without the other. This is a principle that never went away. You would not be able to have Shiva without Shakti. It's not possible. In fact, Shiva himself has a form where he is both male and female. So if I want you to come away with anything today, it's eternal. There's no beginning and no end. It's complicated, obviously. Multiple scriptures. The beginning of it is the Vedas, which are considered the foundation of all thought in Hinduism. The Sanatan Dharma is the correct term. And that everything in its dualistic way actually unifies into one. You cannot separate one from the other. Everything is balanced. And that what they're trying to interpret is, how is nature a part of us and how are we a part of nature? What the philosophers were trying, and it is a philosophy, what the philosophers were trying to determine is, how is this world us? And how are we the world? As you get further into the philosophies, even 3,000, 4,000 years ago, they had figured out so much about how the DNA in a tree is also so much a part of us. They had it figured out long before any physicist came along. So another thing that they are very offended by is the idea that somebody in the Arab world invented zero. They had zero hundreds of years before anybody else. The idea that physicists could come up with the idea of the time-space continuum, they had that long before anybody else. What we call science, they called their truth and philosophy thousands of years before anybody could even write it down. So another thing I want to impress upon you is how old and how knowledgeable this philosophy is. And that the good news is unity itself really capitalized on so much of this beginning. So much of what was, universal principle, I guess. The center of universal oneness would not be a concept foreign to a Hindu, right? Another thing, as you get into the Vedas, Vedas really set up the structure. So we have the household, we have ceremony, we have the priest coming to the house, we have parts of the house that are sectioned off for altars. Temples don't come for another 1,000 or so years. So the household really is the place. Much like many in monotheistic religions, your household, your marriage, and your children become a very important part of how you explore your faith and deal with your faith. The life stages of a Hindu. You are a student, then you are a householder, then you are a forest dweller to learn the teachings, And then you become a renunciant. You let go of everything. If you know the story of the Buddha, he follows all of these stages. In the story of the Ramayana, which we'll get to next week, they follow the stages. So the life stages are very, very important. If you look at any pictures of India, going on tour in India, you see those men with the big dreadlocks and the white faces. They're called sadhus. They have reached the renunciant stage. They've left their home, they've left their teachings, everything is now gone. So they have pretty much no clothing, no home, they beg for their food. It's part of the life stage. They're supported by the society. This is how it's all supposed to work. So just understand that the life cycle is very important in the Vedic foundation. Okay? Household, life stages, teachings, learnings, all set up before we even get to things like the Bhagavad Gita, the life of Krishna, and everything else. At this time, you have a very rudimentary understanding of gods. There's a rumor that there's 330 million gods. That is absolutely not true. It is completely false. It is not a polytheistic religion because there is only one principle, one thing, and that is Brahman, ultimate reality. That's all there is. If you are worshiping a god, it is simply because you identify with that aspect the most, that aspect of the one. It is not separate from anything else. This is not, I love talking to Unity people because they understand we're not separate. There's no separation. So at this time, the pantheon is very small. You have, we're talking, what are we at our dates here? 1700 BCE to 500 BCE. You have maybe a very small pantheon of about 10, but I will tell you that Shiva is one of the oldest, and he will evolve eventually. I think I'm going to leave it at there for now. I've probably gone over. Barb, don't tell me. Yes, just a little. So that's where we are right now. I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope you have access to my email. But we're at the Vedas and Upanishads, and then the next time I come, we're going to move on to the more classical scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, and we'll get into the pantheon of the gods and goddesses and what we consider classical Hinduism. And I'll spend most of the time on my favorite subject, bhakti, which is the way of devotion, the way of worship, because that's what you see when you see Hinduism on the television or whatever. Thank you, everybody.
Woo! Whoa. That's what we're saying. Yeah, best history lesson I've had in a long time.
Oh, meditation.
Yes.
All right. Feet flat on the floor, please. Taking your hands to your thighs, opening your hands. This is the pose for conflict resolution. This is the pose for reconciliation. This is the pose for peace. The pose for acceptance. This is what you do when you need healing from conflict. And so we disengage from the outside world. We come directly to the within. There is nothing in your life right now that can be solved in the next few minutes. So simply let go, be with the peace, be with the reconciliation inside the self. Honor the healing. And enjoy a few moments for breath. Connecting again with the breath. Breath as principle, as universal law. We cannot give without receiving. And so in that, we are all one.
Carol, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, so it's now time for the offering baskets, which will be passed from both sides. And thank you for your gifts. And if you wouldn't mind affirming with me our offering prayer. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am joy-filled and grateful.
Like a soft breeze blowing on the field, blowing on the fields of my mind, bringing seeds from out of nowhere, like a light rainfall falling on the fields, falling on the fields of my mind, nourishing my soul, making me whole. You are here with me. You are a part of me as our dreams unfold into this world. Like a bird and fly, flying through the skies, flying through the skies of my mind, floating on the winds of endless possibility. Like a sunshine bright, shining through the skies, shining through the skies of my mind, lighting up my soul with love and illumination. You are here with me. You are a part of me as our dreams unfold into this world. We are one. We are one. We are one. Like a light wave falls, crashing on the shore, crashing on the shore of my mind, bestowing gifts upon the sand, like a boat that sails, sailing from the shore, sailing from the shores of my mind toward the new horizon. That's tomorrow. You are here with me. You are a part of me as our dreams unfold into this world. We are one. We are one. We are one.
Okay, you know what? I meant to give you guys a little bit of a brief bio on Chris too. So, you know, it's never too late. It's never too late. It ain't over till it's over. So
We know Chris.
So Chris has been performing professionally for 25 years now. To date, he has performed over 4,000 gigs for such clients as Walt Disney World, Ritz-Carlton Resorts, the American Red Cross, and many, many more. Man, all right. In 2006, Chris and co-writer Stacey Knights won the American Idol Underground Songwriting Competition in the jazz category with the song Morning Monk. Wow, pretty impressive there. In 2003, he was recognized by the government of Key West, Florida, for his composition titled Storm of the Century and his musical depiction of the 1935 Last Day Hurricane.
Labor Day.
Labor Day, okay, all righty, Labor Day. I need to make these words bigger, obviously, at home. You know? In 2002, his song Palma de Mallorca,
Mallorca.
okay, was recognized by the King of Spain. He is noted for his great skill of guitar playing that is showcased on his Christmas CD and his Back to Brazil CD. All right. Yeah, Chris, good job, man. Woo. Wow.
And there's one more thing.
Oh.
He's a professional bowler.
Oh, really? Like on the PBA tour? Whoa.
Yeah, I'm not a TV bowler, but you know.
Okay, all right.
I do have my PBA cards.
There you go. All right. Welcome up, man. Okay, the resume keeps growing here. Good job. Okay, so do we have, are there any concerns that we need to bring forth before the community or anything that requires prayer? Any concerns, any prayers? Okay, Terry?
You can say a few prayers for Jim Bob Dixon, Gladstone area. He fell into a fire and has third-degree burns on his legs.
Oh. All right, thank you.
Gladstone, yeah.
Any other concerns or? Okay.
I think probably everybody heard, but Ronnie Lambert made her transition, and probably want to keep her family in prayer.
Thank you. I had a chance to see her too last week. We went down to the St. Luke's hospice house. So yeah, I did have an opportunity to sit there and visit with her and her sisters, and so that was really a touching moment there to be able to see her before she made her transition. So awesome prayers with her and her family for sure. Is there anything else, Doug?
I would like the community to hold Barb's son in their prayers and hearts. He's having a renewed need for chemo. and we want to make sure that that's as powerful and as healthy as we can.
All right. And thank you for that. And what's his name?
Chad.
Chad. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anything else? Got my two little friends here today. I haven't seen them in forever. There's my two little friends here. Yay. Okay, so let's go ahead and close out today with our closing prayer. No, we have a song coming?
We have a prayer for
we do?
community concern.
Yeah, we have our prayer for community concerns. Okay, there we go. So if you would affirm those together with me, centering our minds and hearts in prayer, we let go of any of the thoughts, worry, or challenge, and simply rest in the stillness. We know that our source of strength and peace comes from God alone. We give thanks for divine order and trust that we are all held in the grace of grace. Amen. And then next Sunday, our speaker is going to be our very own Patrick Hanley, who is in the house today. Yes. All right, Patrick. And then our guest musician is going to be Michael Martin. So he'll be returning to us. All right. And we just want to thank Kara, and we want to thank Chris for being here today. We appreciate the gift that you shared with us on your talents and your knowledge. So we again want to thank both of you for being here today, and we look forward to having you back again. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, and now Chris is going to offer us our closing song.
We're going to do the peace song to close with today. So if you want to stand and join and sing. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be, with God as creator. Family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. All right, amen.
One prayer.
If you take your seat, please, we'll have our closing prayer. Just as sunbeams refract into new colors, so do perspectives enlarge the whole understanding. Let us go forth today, understanding that it's not our knowledge, it is our love. It is not our having or doing, it is our becoming. Thank you, God. Amen.